The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining our webinar on connecting your communities. We will wait just a few moments for everyone to join, and then we will get started. When the webinar begins, you will automatically be muted. Hello again, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. We'll get started in just a few minutes, and when the webinar begins, you'll be muted. So thanks for hanging in there with us, and we'll be with you soon. Okay, thanks everyone. Thanks again for joining our webinar on connecting your communities. My name is Wendy Piper, and I am the Associate Director of the Office of Development and Planning with the Catholic Diocese of Columbus. I'm very pleased to be with you this afternoon, and I think that I can speak for all of us in our office when I say that we're very excited to partner with CCS Fundraising to help and support our parishes and schools right now. If you haven't had a chance yet to schedule a parish one-on-one, please contact your parish support coordinator to do that. Here are just a few housekeeping things to remember as we begin. On your screen, you will see an image of your control panel. Most of you have joined this presentation listening using your computer speaker system by default. This means that if you can hear music through your computer, you should also be able to hear our presentation. If you would prefer to join over the telephone, just select phone call in the audio pane and the dial-in information will be displayed. You will have the opportunity to submit text questions today to our presenters by typing your questions into the questions pane of the control panel. You may send in your questions at any time during the presentation. We will collect these questions and address them during our Q&A session at the end of today's presentation. So here we will see our agenda for today. We will begin our webinar with prayer and some introductions. Then we will go over Secure and talk a little bit about that program and the experiences we're having with Parishes so far. We'll talk a bit about a 3-tiered audience. Then we will discuss phone calls and conducting a census, email blasts and letters, some low-tech and non-tech events that we can use to support our parishes. And then at the end, we'll have questions. I'm very pleased to introduce you to Father Ramon Oguera, who is joining us today and participating in our webinar. Father Ramon came to the United States from the Philippines in 2011. He is the administrator of 2 parishes in Columbus, St. Dominic Parish and the community of Holy Rosary and St. John, and has been there since January of 2019. Father Ramon, thank you for joining us today. Would you please lead us in prayer as we begin?
Hi, Wendy. Hi, this is Jessica speaking. I think Father Ramon's having a couple of technology problems, so he might hop on a little bit later. We're working on getting him connected. Would you mind leading us in prayer today?
Happy to do that. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, amen. Heavenly Father, we thank you for bringing us together today. We ask that you bless our time together and help us to strengthen our communities, to support our parishes, and help us to always follow your will under the guidance of the Holy Spirit. We pray with a special intercession from Our Lady as we pray a Hail Mary together. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners, now and at the hour of our death. Amen. Okay, well, thank you, everyone. You've heard her voice already, but now I am pleased to introduce you to Jessica Grimmett with CCS Fundraising, who will be leading us through today's webinar. Thank you, Jessica.
Thank you so much, Wendy, and thank you guys for already working with us this morning. But it's a pleasure to be here with you guys today. I know you've heard a different voice for the last couple webinars, but I'm excited to be working with the Diocese of Columbus and getting to learn so much about all the work that you guys do here. Just to give a little bit of background about who I am. So I've been working with CCS. This is my first year here, and I've had the opportunity to work with the Diocese of Green Bay before I came here. So it's just been a really incredible journey to learn about the faith sector, and especially during this unprecedented time as we are navigating circumstances that we as a community of faith haven't seen. But I think this just speaks again to the resilience of this community of faith, that we've navigated so many circumstances, and it can really be a grounding rod for a lot of people in this time. So just wanted to take the beginning part of this webinar just to reiterate again, what is Secure? I think we're in week 5, I believe. Week 4, so I apologize. Week 4 of doing Secure here at the diocese, and so we've had the opportunity to kind of get our legs underneath us and what it looks like. And so just wanted to again reiterate, what is Secure, what are we doing, and why are we having this webinar today, and kind of reiterating tools and resources we can for you. Again, the heart and goal of Secure is really to provide real-time support to parishes to help them connect with their parishioners and also open up channels for virtual and alternative giving. It's this idea that we as a community can partner in this time and stay connected in this time. And so we do that through a number of different platforms, through a number of different strategies to stay connected, to make sure that parishioners know that we're there and engaged with them, but then also inviting them to participate and support the parish at this time as well. You know, we're not meeting formally in Mass, and as we're starting that this next week, it's still going to look different. You know, passing the plate may not be an option at this time. And so how are we giving parishioners the opportunity to still steward their resources, to give their gifts to the church at this time? How are we doing that? In a lot of ways, that's through online giving. So how does this program work? What does it look like? Again, you have the opportunity to sign up for a one-on-one Wendy kind of already hinted to that, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later. So you can sign up with a one-on-one with your parish support coordinator. And typically that first meeting, we would recommend that the pastor is there, and then you have the opportunity to invite whoever you may feel on your staff would benefit from that conversation. So from a lot of our one-on-ones, we've seen business managers, we've seen social media staff members who are in charge of those accounts, anyone who's in charge, sometimes secretaries if you're doing a lot of email blasts or letters. And usually that meeting lasts about 30 to 45 minutes, and that's in the time where we can really take stock of what are you doing, what resources do you have at your disposal, and how can we work together week to week to implement those steps. And what that looks like is, I'm going to teeter off to the next slide real quick. We build out what's called a parish plan. And here's just an example of what it can look like. It kind of gives you just an overarching goals here at the top, and then digestible step-by-step plans. What are we going to do this week? So we're not tackling the world in a day. We're doing step-by-step. And so this week we're going to look through just these specific steps, next week. And we will walk with you guys each of those weeks, implementing those goals, implementing those strategies so that you never feel like you have to do this on your own. And then what's the anticipated outcome? Some of this last part may be blocked by your kind of dashboard here. But what is the anticipated impact of this? The impact is that we want you to be able to increase your revenue and increase your communications with your parishioners. In a time that we feel disconnected, and sometimes we feel like we aren't as connected as a community of faith, this is the opportunity to really give you resources to do that, but then also increase offertory and improve infrastructures and responsiveness in this time. So that's overall kind of our look at this. And once Father Ramon is able to join us, or if he is able to join us, we'll hear a little bit more about what it looked like for him on his first initial one-on-one with Brian. But until then, we are going to keep moving forward and dive into the talk for today. So for some of you on with us today, you may have already had the opportunity to do a one-on-one with us. And in that initial one-on-one, and through the one-on-ones we've been able to have, we've been really reiterating this idea that when you are communicating with your parishioners, you need to be understanding that you're communicating with three main audiences. And this is what we're calling our three-tiered audience system. So in parishes, anywhere, if you have a couple hundred parishioners to, a couple thousand, you're going to have this diversification amongst your demographics, young and old. The resources and gifts and abilities are all different across the board. But then it's even more apparent in this time where we're a little bit more disconnected. There's kind of three audiences in terms of their content and connection to technology. So when we're talking about our tier 1 audience, we're talking about those active users of technology. These are maybe your parishioners that are well connected to the internet. They're engaging in kind of all different communication channels. So this person may have a Facebook and Instagram. They're regularly checking their emails. They're regularly looking at your Facebook page. And so last week's webinar really reiterated different tactics to talking with this audience. And so we went through step-by-step and tutorials on how to post and pin things on your Facebook page, how to live stream en masse. So this is really geared towards that first tier audience. So then you come down to your second tier, and these are maybe your more semi-active users of technology. They're mildly engaged with different communication channels. They may have an email, but they're not regularly checking it. They may have a Facebook, but they haven't logged on in a really long time. So communication with them is a little bit different. It's a little bit more sporadic. Again, you may be able to communicate with them through those social media channels, but it's sometimes a hit or miss. And that's your second tier channels. And then this one that we're going to be focusing on primarily here for this webinar is your tier 3 families. These are parishioners who may not have the internet, who may have very low or limited access to the internet and to these communication channels. So they may have never interacted with Facebook or emails or websites. And so how are we still touching this group of parishioners? So again, this is kind of the overarching view, is when you're thinking of strategies of how to connect with your parish, you're kind of wanting to do it in a 3-tiered approach. How are we hitting all of these different levels of parishioners so that they all are aware and up to date on what's going on in our parish? So the first area that we're going to talk through is phone calls. And this may, some of you guys may be, chuckling to yourself or smiling like, okay, this is kind of one of those timeless communication channels, but it's something that's even more paramount how incredibly useful it is, especially in this season. For a lot of times, I can speak for myself, this season has really opened up an opportunity for us to stay connected. I've been on the phone with people I haven't talked to in a number of weeks or months, but there is this kind of urgency for connection, and sometimes that's felt in even just the small ways of a phone call. So, in these phone calls, for a second, let me go back. When we think of these phone calls, some of you guys have parishes, again, that are ranging from a couple hundred parishioners to over 1,000. So you're looking at this and you're like, there's no way we can possibly do all of these phone calls or do it in a timely manner. And so we're going to walk through different scenarios depending on your parish size, but also understanding there's very different techniques on how you can approach this. So for some parishes, it may be best if they use their own internal staff. Hey, everyone who's here or who's been a part of this, we're going to break up the numbers. We're going to do these phone calls over the next 3 days. Sometimes you guys may have a really robust volunteer base already, so maybe it's tapping into that base, asking, hey, could you help us out with this call list for this next week? Some of you also have really interconnected ministries, so each ministry can take an opportunity to connect out to those intentionally engaged in that community. So there may be youth groups that you can have help with this, or if you have, a men's group, different things like that. So it's understanding that there's kind of very different approaches you can to gathering that team to help do this. Some parishes have even done call trees. So you start with a certain batch of numbers, you encourage them to make phone calls in turn. So there's kind of a lot of different ways you can approach this. When we understand phone calls holistically, the idea is that there should be 3 main objectives that you're hoping to hit in any regard when you're doing phone calls. When you're doing phone calls, the first initial step is to always do a wellness check. This is the opportunity to check in with them and authentically ask, hey, how are you doing? How is your family doing? How have you personally been affected in this season? I think taking a step to, of course, these phone calls will have, other motivations in mind in terms of, yes, we'd love to get, updated information. We want to do these other things. But I think the heart of these phone calls is truly and earnestly to check in with your parishioners. How are they doing? And how can we be a resource to them during this time? And in a lot of ways, I think just even that initial step, this very first objective in making phone calls, is such an incredible touch point with your parishioners. This is an opportunity for you to not only earnestly hear how they're doing, you can take notes of specific prayer requests or health concerns or financial concerns. That is such an incredible amount of information for parishioners, for your pastor, for them to have that to intentionally be able to be a resource to them. And it's also reminding your parishioners, hey, we're here, and that we think you're important, and that it's important for us to stay engaged with that. So that's really the biggest part of these phone calls, is also checking in with them. The second kind of objective of this is to conduct a parish census. You're already on the phone with them. You already are engaged with that parishioner, that family. It's an incredible opportunity to make sure that you have the correct information. As you're rolling out quite a few updates, or especially in this season as we're beginning to reopen parishes, it is really important that you have accurate information. And I could go into a deep dive of this, but JEANNA is going to walk us through this in just a few minutes. How to conduct a parish census, specific tips and tricks you need to know about it, and how to get that information back to the diocese so we all have the correct information. So just an understanding that this script is going to look like, hey, how are you doing? We really want to check in with you at this time. But while we have you on the phone, is this the correct address for you? Is this the correct email for you? Do you have any other additional phone numbers we should consider? We have a lot of updates coming up, and we want to make sure that we get you the most accurate information. So our first objective is always to check in, to authentically ask them how they're doing. The second is, if you would like to, you can take this opportunity to conduct a parish census. And then lastly is to make sure that you have the opportunity to truly give them updates. So this is kind of threefold in this. I talked with a parish this morning, and they have a flurry of updates that they're going to be giving their parishioners as they're considering reopening Mass. There's already, and I know it's going to be unique to your parish, specific precautions or protocols and procedures that you may have in place. And as your staff is building that out, you guys have already, I know in many ways, parishes have already found out how they would like to communicate that with parishioners. So if you're joining us for Mass this Sunday, we need you to enter through this door. We're going to have these resources for you. Please wear a mask. If you have specific COVID updates, this is the opportunity to provide that. Secondly, and I would just encourage you, if you have a unique parish update. So some parishes, may be reopening for Mass, but then it's also reminding parishioners, okay, we recognize that not everyone will be able to be a part of this with us. And so maybe it's reminding them of resources that are already available. We are streaming Mass every Sunday at 9 and 11. Please, you can access it here. Do you have a chance to be with our Facebook channel? You can see it there. This is an opportunity to, again, not only provide COVID updates that may be unique to your parish, but also to provide updates about resources that are already ready and accessible to your parish. And then lastly, and this is something we really, really encourage, even if it's over the phone, even if it may, for some of us, feel strange or different to do, is to give an offertory update. Following this webinar, and later when I will send out the link, I'll be providing scripts and sample language for when you're doing these phone calls. And there's different options of how you can address this topic. Some parishes may choose to do a direct update. Hey, this is where we're at financially. We're going to just give this update to everyone. We want everyone to know, open and honestly, this is where we are. Some other parishes may do a specific call to action, saying along the lines of, we encourage you to continue your support of our parish. These are different ways you can give. You can mail it in, you can drop it off by the office, you can give online, and if you have any trouble doing this, here's how you can do it. So there's definitely a lot of objectives that you can hit when doing phone calls. And again, this is a great way and a timeless way to really hone in on that audience that may be a little bit more isolated or may not have access to all of the technology of the other resources such as Facebook or email. So I'm going to pass it off to JEANNA really quick, and she is going to give us more specifics on what it looks like to conduct a parish census.
Thanks, Jessica. So this is JEANNA from the Census Office at the Diocese. And just real quick, kind of some basic information to gather while you're on the phone with your parishioners. Obviously, if you've reached them, you're sure you have at least one correct phone number. It's always good just to kind of verify that you have other correct numbers, cell phone numbers for each of the adult members in the household, email addresses for each member, any other numbers they want to provide you. And then you can always take it one step further and get additional information for family members that should be added or removed from the records. So if you've got a record in front of you and you're, verifying all of the information, and you happen to know the person you're speaking to, and they've recently had a child who's not on the record, just be sure to get the child's name and date of birth, and if sacramental information, if the child has been baptized yet, or if you have a record that has adult children who are over 25 years of age, they should come off of the family record and created their own record if they are in fact still active in that parish. So that type of information is always good to obtain. Just you want to make sure that we have as much information for each member of the family as possible. One critical piece of information that is often overlooked is a date of birth. We have several members in the diocese that have the same name. We have some very common names. We have duplicate records within the diocese. One good way to make sure that we have the right person at the right place is by their date of birth. So that's always a quick, easy piece of information to gather. For those parishes that are on Parish Soft with their database with the
Okay, great.
The standard is. Did you want me to keep going?
If you could repeat a little bit, you said you broke up just there in the last part, so we may have missed the beginning part of your sentence.
Okay, so I was getting ready to say that there are many different ways that you can get me the information for those parishes not on Parish Soft. The standard C11, the update forms can be either mailed to me or they can be emailed to me. But I just wanted to remind everyone that with us working from home, if they're mailed to the diocese, it will take a few extra days to get to me because somebody at the office then has to turn around and mail them to me. So if anybody would like to reach out to me personally, I'd be happy to give you my home address. If you want to mail me updates directly to my house, that's not a problem with me either. So.
Okay, thank you so much, Jeanna. We appreciate it. And Jeanna is such an incredible resource. I had an opportunity to talk with her even earlier this week. She's a wealth of knowledge. So if you have any questions or, concerns about how to conduct this or what questions should we be asking, really encourage you to take the time to reach out to Jeanna. I will also provide her contact information in the follow-up email so that if you do want to reach out to her personally to set up how to do your parish census, you can do that. So thank you, Jeanna, for speaking into that.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
Yep. All right. We are going to move onward and talk about what does it look like to actually do this. Again, as I said before, it's different for each parish. And depending on you and your staff and your resources, you're going to do this your own way, and you're going to do this in the way that fits best for you. So kind of the initial 4 steps to it, take stock of your resources. Again, we're going to provide you with some sample language, so you're not starting from ground zero. I would highly encourage you, once you get the scripts or you get the sample language, make it unique for your parish. There may be a specific style or way that you, want to greet your parishioners. And there may be a specific way you would like to word how we address offertory or how we're providing updates for COVID. So take that resource definitely as a starting point, but don't let it be the ending point of how you want to make it unique for your parish. So you're gathering your resources. We're going to send you a couple today. But then the next step is you really want to gather your team. Again, that's unique for your parish. If you'd like to reach out to volunteers, help gather them up, that's great. we've encouraged a lot of people. Some people are reaching out to their youth groups. You know, they're excited, they're engaged, they may have a little bit more time than others. You know, rallying those resources, having them help you with this. If you have robust ministries or councils that you want to have help you, whatever approach, gather your team. Third, you're going to make a game plan. So for you and your parish, you may make it a priority. We want to have these phone calls done this week. So what does that look like? We need everyone to make 10 calls for the next 3 days. Or we need everyone to, you know, finish these calls today. What is that timeline going to look like for you? And what deliverables do you need? Do you need them to take notes while they're doing a phone call? So then if someone may have lost a job during this time, we know how to pray for them. We know how to connect them with resources. So making a game plan and communicating that with your team. Another resource we'll be giving you guys later on today is a call report log. This is just kind of a landing zone for different volunteers you may be working with, to log those notes, to log, you know, we left a voicemail, we talked with them in person, so you know real time what that communication looked like. And then lastly, make the calls. Sounds simple, but I understand there's a lot that goes into it beforehand and during those phone calls. So just make sure that whoever you're working with, they feel comfortable and confident with their script. Before my time in CCS, I had a number, I think 5 or so years of working in admissions, and we would do different phone calls and you'd get a script. And even though it's been unique for that specific phone call, that specific office, there's something about making it unique even for yourself. So I would always encourage the volunteers that I worked with, take a minute to read the script before you make your first call. The first call is always going to be a little wonky, but you know, make it your own. So sometimes there may be a blank where it says insert name. And if someone's flustered, they may actually say that when they're on the phone with them. And so if you encourage your volunteers, whoever's helping, to really edit that script so it's unique to them, so that there's kind of an ease of how they can flow as they're reading it, even if they're nervous. So that's kind of the initial steps and how to. So that's kind of just one. Again, we're talking to our third tier audience. These are audience members who may not have access to the internet or all of these different communication channels. So phone calls is a great way to ensure that you're for sure getting that information out to parishioners. You're talking with them. It's not face to face, but it almost feels like the closest connection to it. But the second one that you can join, or the second tactic that you can work with, is email blasts. This is, again, it is email blasts and letters. To some extent, this is involving technology. But again, it's a little bit different of a communication channel than specifically using social media. So when considering an email versus a letter, it's good to understand kind of the intent and differences in both of them. For an email, this is something that's incredibly time efficient. If you need something sent out that day, if you need something communicated this hour, you have that opportunity where letters may not be that option. It's also incredibly customizable. We're going to go through some different platforms so you guys will feel comfortable with your options that you have. Some of these may have templates, so you can insert photos or specific parish colors or logos. So sometimes it's a little bit more engaging than letters in terms of the appearance and appeal of it. And lastly, emails can be interactive. And that's incredibly important if you're including links or embedding your videos. It's real-time opportunity for people to click and give their offertory, click and be a part of your Mass that Sunday. So there's just kind of those initial benefits with emails. And then we also have the option of letters. Letters is, again, a timeless communication, and it also is where we feel we have the most impact with possibly this third tier audience, this audience that may not be engaged with technology, but they are easily able to get mail and get that information there. This tends to be with our older parishioners, but it's not solely segmented to that audience. There's quite a number of young people and middle-aged people that are interacting with mail. I know for myself, I have a really good friend that sends me a letter once a week, and it's something that's exciting to be a part of, going to the mailbox and having something that's personalized for you, especially from someone you care about, and that in a lot of ways can be our parish. I see that we have Father Ramon on here. We're great to see him as well. We're going to talk with him a little bit later and about his experience of doing a one-on-one, and also his parish recently did a phone call tree. So we'll have the opportunity to hear a little bit about that after we talk through letters and emails. Similar to phone calls, there's the same objectives we want to hit when we're talking to parishioners through emails or letters. This idea that even though it looks different, even though we are not interacting with someone over the phone, we still want to communicate through our language a wellness check. We still want to communicate that we are a resource, that we're here for them, and that very much we care about how they are doing during this time. And so that's going to be unique for you and your parish and your pastor, how you would like to communicate that. But you want to have language in your letter that is initially right off the bat saying, how are you doing? We're thinking of you during this time. We're praying for you during this time. Secondly, we're providing parish updates. Again, this is where we have the opportunity to give information on, specific updates for how we are going to reopen Mass, what procedures are we doing, what opportunities there are. But what's different in emails and letters, again, because we're not talking with them directly over the phone, we're not directly having that interaction. What we're doing in letters and emails is also giving a call to action. And that's incredibly important because it's a kind of a one-sided conversation in these things, but when we're giving a call to action, we're inviting them to make it a two-way street in this conversation. So especially with emails, when you have the opportunity to include last week's recorded Mass, when you have the option to include offertory, a link to your offertory or your online giving, or a link to your Facebook channel, that gives them the opportunity to be a part of that conversation. So in emails, you're able to include those links, and letters, that action may be more, again, the language of giving them. Please go to our website to receive the most recent updates, to learn about online giving, examples like that. So we're going to dive deep first into what emails can look like. And this is just some tips and tricks when giving an email blast. It's important to keep it simple and engaging. If it's really text heavy, people will not be engaged in reading an email. Where it's a letter, you have a little bit more freedom to provide more text. An email, you really want to keep it short and succinct. At least less than 3 paragraphs. Keep it short, keep it concise. Also, you want to keep it consistent. If you are consistently sending out emails every Friday at 4 o'clock, you have the opportunity to really increase your reader base. If they know at this time and at this place, I'm going to get an email from my parish that's dependable, and that's something they continue to be looking out for. If you send it out sporadically, it may, have the desired effect of dropping in someone's inbox and they're like, oh, here's a new communication from the parish. But if you want to really, grow a reader base, keep your timing consistent. If you're sending out a newsletter, send it out on the same day every week. We have a newsletter once a week that we're sending out for Secure. It gives you opportunities to learn about the past webinars, our current webinars, other resources at your disposal. We send it out every Friday. It's something it's sure you'll see it every Friday. So again, prioritizing consistency. Again, we're providing a call to action. It's really important if you're sending emails that you also give the opportunity, if you're going to talk about Mass or if you're going to talk about offertory, Make it as easy as possible for your parishioners to be engaged with this. That's embedding links. In emails, you have the opportunity to include hyperlinks. So certain words you can characterize. Say, for example, the line says, if you would like to support offertory, click here. You have the opportunity to embed a link in the word here, so you don't have to put in the entire link. Sometimes that can be a long jumble of words. It kind of streamlines your email and, again, keeps it simple and engaging. Again, keep it short and always send out a tester email to yourself. A lot of these platforms we'll talk about in just a minute will give you that opportunity to send a tester email so you can see what it looks like and engage with it real time to see what it'll look like for your parishioners. So I apologize if these systems, many of you guys I acknowledge will probably be familiar with, but just wanted to take a minute to give you guys a deeper look into each of these platforms. We had a meeting this morning and we were talking about just these exact platforms. And so I hope it's helpful in reiterating the pros and cons of each of these and specific maybe trademarks of each system. So the first one we're going to talk about is MailChimp. If you have a parish, even if you're small or large, a lot of these platforms help in streamlining the process of sending emails. Where in normal email book groups, you can set up a group and send out an email. These help to load in your contacts into a second platform and help you to possibly segment these audiences, to give a different look or feel to your emails. They tend to have a more professional or polished look. And again, as I said, some of these platforms give you all the opportunities to upload your personal colors and logos and pictures. And so all of these things are options in these platforms. MailChimp is definitely a leader in these platforms. MailChimp is one of the largest email platforms. It has extensive metrics, so you can kind of see on this right side of this chart what it tracks. It tracks who opens it, who maybe clicked a link that you had embedded in it. It'll give you who did not open it. It gives you where they were, in the world, who's reading your emails, what time they read it. So if you really are, if you find those statistics or that data valuable, MailChimp is an incredible resource because it gives you all of those metrics. Across all of these platforms, there's templates. And again, it's important to understand that if you take the time to build a template, you can typically duplicate it. So it's customizable and it's simple to use. And again, there's excellent guides and tutorials if maybe you're new to this platform that can help you with. One of the cons, though, is there isn't as robust of a customer support system. There isn't a call line. There may only be, they prefer email. And so if you have a communication or a concern, just know that it may take a couple days for that, that concern to be voiced and responded to. So just knowing, especially if you're new to these systems, customer support can be one of the most important things as you're starting getting things off the ground. So just know that that's something that you can consider with this. There's a number of different pricing plans, and you can see which one's unique for your parish. For the free plan, you can have 2,000 contacts and send up to 10,000 emails a month. But know within this free plan, it's usually segmented to one audience. So say if you wanted to send out specific emails to your ministry teams or your staff or your youth group, it's not as intuitive for that initial free plan. That is definitely still a service that is given underneath this platform. It just might be in another plan that's a little bit higher priced. So this is MailChimp. Again, a lot of unique features that we'll see across all these platforms. Constant Contact is similar. I'm not going to go through all the pros and cons of it because it is very similar to MailChimp. But know that there is a wealth of templates. I think there's something like 400 plus templates. Again, you can send tester emails. The main difference between MailChimp and this is this has a robust customer service. platforms, so they can really help you. They're easily accessible. But understand that one of the biggest differences with Constant Contact is this one's a little bit more business focused. You have the opportunity to embed advertisements. And so there's sometimes a different feel with Constant Contact. You can still definitely do all the same communications. Just know that there's an additional layer of resources that's also there with more of a business focus. Again, there's a free plan for this, but typically it goes by now this one's per month and day. So you have the free option for so many days. But again, I would encourage you, if this is something you want to look into, look at the pricing option that's best for your parish, but understand that most of these platforms do typically have a free version. Just know that there's limitations with it. The last one we're going to talk about is Flocknote. This I will right off the bat say is the priciest option, but this one is incredibly unique because it was built and designed for the Catholic Church. So this was built with a diocesan heartbeat to it, with a ministry mindset, not as much of a marketing mindset. And so it's really intuitive for the Catholic Church. It communicates well with typical Catholic software such as Parish that I know quite a few parishes in this diocese use. It's Spanish language friendly. And also it's not solely limited to emails. It's really a communication platform. So it helps with sending text messages, or it also helps with sometimes your social media channels. So it really allows you kind of across a number of platforms to be engaged. And again, automated calls, things like that. It has an excellent customer service feature to it. And this also, of course, you can subgroup out your contacts for. One unique feature of this is there's administrative levels. So there's, again, like a tiered approach. There may be, the number one administrator who has a certain amount of privileges or things they can interact with on the site. And you can add in subgroups for how you want to layer out your administration for emails. Again, one thing to really note with this is the priciest option, whereas the other platforms will go based off of month or resources that you can use. This one goes off of base of your contact list. So if you have a lot of contacts that you're reaching out to, it's going to be a little bit higher of an option. So again, just wanted to make you aware of different email platforms. Again, when we're thinking of emails, there's specific things we want to keep in mind, keeping it short, concise, and interactive. Letters, it's a little bit different. It's following a lot of those same patterns. Again, we still want to have language for a wellness check. We still want to give parish updates, and we still want to give a call to action. With a letter, it's going to take a little bit more, you want to have a little bit more eyes on it. Not saying you don't want that for emails, but for letters, you for sure want to give a little bit more time with it. So we would encourage you to draft that letter. Typically, if it's coming from the pastor, have him draft it at least a week in advance of when you're wanting to send it. And then I would encourage you to have 2 to 3 trusted staff members read it. Sometimes there's the pull when you're sending out a really big letter to have a lot of eyes on it, which is important, and I'm not negating that for you and your parish. But sometimes that can be overwhelming, and sometimes that's a lot of thoughts being added into a letter. So really streamlining who you have eyes on that for, or at least the final check for. So just encouraging you to really consider, who do you want engaged in that conversation, and who do we think is best prepared to give the final once through. You always need to have that great editor in your back pocket that can look for the commas you're missing, to look for another way to phrase things. So think in mind, how you want to draft this letter, and then who you want to follow up with it. Again, work with your staff and the proper channels for how to do mailings. I know quite a few of you guys already do this day to day. So this isn't anything out of the norm for you. And then the one thing that we would also encourage you is, once you've sent a letter, follow up. So again, there's a number of channels that you can work with. This could be a phone call where you're reiterating to your parishioners, hey, you'll be receiving a letter this week. keep your eyes out for it. It could be an email that says that. It could be a post on Facebook that's saying that. It's something that gives your parishioners a heads up and keep their eyes out and alert for this. So that is, we kind of walk through phone calls, emails, and letters. But before we do this, I'm going to talk to Father Ramon real quick and hear what his experience was like doing a one-on-one with us, and then also conducting a phone call tree. So, hi, Father Ramon. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Thanks so much again for joining us. I'd love to hear, I know you and your parish have had the opportunity to meet with Brian a couple weeks ago. Can you tell us what that experience was like and how he was able to support you?
Well, it was very helpful for me, especially during this time of pandemic where we are able to communicate through online and celebrating masses through our website. And I got some very important tips from him. For example, during the stream of masses, he said towards the end, when you do the announcement, that's the time you have to update your parishioners about the parish and also the update about coming from the diocese, and also encourage people to give their offerings and tell also people the way to offer those offerings. And he made a very important tip is in a website, because in our St. Dominic website, the click button is at the lower part of the page. So he said that's very important to put it right on the top.
Father Ramon, can you still hear us?
So that people would see the hear me?
Sorry, say that again.
Hello?
Hi, sorry. I think there was a time where it may have gone out. Can you reiterate? I know you said that
Sorry.
it was great in helping you kind of talk through resources of how to edit your homepage and give
Yes.
in mass. What else did you guys talk about?
Well, about the giving or putting some video message in our website for the parishioners. He said that's very, very important too. And also that the clicking button should be on top of the web page,
Yeah.
not below, because people will sometimes will not scroll down to look down. So it should be right on the top so that people can look at it and they are able to click and give their offerings online.
Yeah. And so a lot of these tips were rather painless to say, or just an opportunity to kind of take the resources you already had and just put them one step further. And I know you guys had the opportunity to also conduct phone calls. Do you want to tell us a little bit of how that looked real time implementing that?
Yes, when public masses were suspended in St. Dominic, we meet the Parish Council and the Finance Council regularly every Saturday. So during that first Saturday when masses were suspended, we have come to the decision that we have to make phone calls to our parishioners. So the name of parishioners were divided according to the number of the people who were willing to give the phone calls. And after 2 weeks, we gathered the report, and it was the parishioners were so glad to receive those phone calls. And also, the parishioners were also informed how to give their offerings, because not too many people were giving online. So they were given this alternative how to send their donations to the church. In fact, in our offertory, that was a great impact, because that week where masses were suspended, the collection was only 1,200. So after 2 weeks, the collection went up to almost 5,000. So that was a very good way to inform the parishioners and giving them alternatives how to send their offerings, and also to just ask them how they're doing, and they're rest assured that we're praying for them. So I think that's a very good way of communication to parishioners.
Yeah.
To phone call.
Yeah, and you said, and can you talk a little bit of their response to those phone calls? What did some of your parishioners say after you were able to reach out to them?
Well, the comments that were so happy to know that the parish is concerned what they are doing and how they are doing. So that's a very great impact to them when they receive phone calls from the parish.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Father Ramon, for speaking to that a little bit. And I apologize, my sound was cutting in and out, so I apologize if I cut in any way when you were speaking. But thank you again for sharing a little bit of your experience. We're going to wrap it up really quickly with just some last-minute low-tech and non-tech events, and then give some opportunities for questions at the end. So, rounding out our conversation, we've talked about phone calls, we've talked about emails, we've talked about letters, and here's just a couple. We only have 3 quick ideas, and then again, I promise we'll leave time for questions. The first idea that we have been reiterating with people through parish one-on-ones is giving a state of the parish address. Now, this does involve a little bit of technology. It is recording a video, or for some parishes, it could be a robocall or an automated message, but giving just an opportunity for the pastor to give a state of the parish address. Before you ever do this, planning that it's only going to be about 2 to 3 minutes. These are some tips and tricks on it. This will be available if you want to walk through kind of the planning, pre-video, filming, and post-video. But the idea is that you're taking 2 to 3 minutes to really, in a concentrated effort, tell your parishioners, hey, this is what's going on. These are the resources that's happening. This is the steps we're taking these next couple weeks. And again, you're giving parishioners a call to action. Hey, check out for an email coming later today. Look for this letter that's coming. It really pairs nicely with a lot of the things we're talking about. So this is one option. And then 2 other options, again, is considering maybe possibly, and again, this is only limited by your own creativity. So parishes who may have a food bank, you can use different opportunities if you're dropping off food. You also can drop off your offertory or things like this, but just giving opportunities. Hey, for a drive-through offertory, our parish is open at this time. Come pick up a bulletin. If you have any, if you're requiring masks for your services, you can also have masks available there. Just giving parishioners an opportunity to interact with your parish. And then one idea that Ellen had reiterated was an Honor Your Mother. As we know, the month of May is honoring the Mother Mary, giving parishioners the opportunity to maybe provide flowers or different things to honor her in this way. And then also pick up any tools or resources that you guys may be providing. So as I stated previously, that we have just a couple of minutes. I'm going to open it up for questions. I've gotten a few as we've gone through this webinar. One question that we got was, which communication tool works best with Parish and keeping contacts up to date? As I said, the email software or the email platform that works most intuitively with Parish is Flockno. But Gina, I will also bring you into this conversation in terms of the census. Again, if you are updating your information, and Gina, you can correct me if I'm wrong, if you're updating your information for the census and you have Parish, that will be communicated with the diocese through that platform. But if you do not have Parish, you will need to give those updates to Gina. Is that correct?
That is correct, yes.
All right, let me see if there's any other questions. Okay. Well, at this time, I'm not seeing any further questions. Please know that that does not mean if you have questions, feel free to reach out to us. Again, we are encouraging you, if you haven't already, you can sign up for a one-on-one. This is going for parishes and schools. As Wendy recommended, reach out to your parish support coordinator and they can get you connected with us. Here's Andrea's and my contact information. So if you have any questions regarding any of the content we covered today, please feel free to reach out to me, email me, or call me. I will be providing a link with this webinar, as well as the resources I referenced later on today. Again, I just want to reiterate, thank you so much for everyone who was able to attend. We appreciate it. And please know that we're here as a resource for you. We will have a webinar again next week. The content and what I'll be covering will be released this Friday in our newsletter. So stay tuned for that. Again, thank you all for joining us, and we hope you have a great rest of your day.